Most founders don't have a people problem, they have an architecture problem. Let me show you what I mean. It's been 2 years, 2 whole years, since I last sat down and recorded one of these. Which sounds dramatic, and honestly, it is a little dramatic. Here's my official explanation. I was busy building, and here's my honest version. I kept telling myself I'd come back when I had something really worth saying, and then I'd finish a big project, think about recording, and instead start another big project. Classic founder behavior. Solve one thing, immediately find 2 more things to solve. So if you're a long-time listener, thank you for still being there. Genuinely, I mean it. And if you're new, welcome. You picked up a good episode to start with, and I promise this one earns its runtime. Over the last 2 years, I've been deep in the work, building Shift AI, growing global teams with remote office, redesigning how we operate, so on and so forth. And somewhere in all of that, somewhere between the product launches, the late calls, and very ambitious spreadsheets, I noticed something. Even when things were going well, even with good people in the right seats, even with revenue being consistent and being in the right direction, something still felt heavier than it should. Not chaotic, not broken, but just heavy. And I've learned that when work feels heavy, it's almost never a people problem. It's an architecture problem. There was one specific day I keep coming back to. On paper, it was a good day, productive day. I've done the calls, cleared up all Slack dependencies, handled approvals, put out a few small fires before they spread, and then it was 6 o'clock and I sat back and I thought, why did none of these feel like leadership? I hadn't been thinking, I'd been reacting. That's the difference, and it matters more than most founders want to admit. I had hired well, I had good processes, but I hadn't actually designed the layers of work. I hadn't thought deliberately about what kind of work belongs where. What should be automated, what should be delegated, and what should only ever live in the senior minds. Once I saw that clearly, I just couldn't unsee it, ever. And that's exactly where this model came from. Instead of asking who should do this, I started asking what level of work is this? Because not all work is equal, and not all work should sit in the same brain. There are 3 different levels, and once you see them, everything starts to click, and you see things through a different frame of mind. Let's start with the obvious one, the stuff that happens again and again and again. Can you send that file? What's the latest update? Can you reschedule this to tomorrow? Where's the doc? What does the compliance say? Individually, harmless. Collectively, cognitive death by 1,000 Slack messages. At one point, I counted how many times I was answering the same 3 questions every single week. Not because my team didn't know the answers, but because we hadn't designed a system that made the answers findable. That's level 1 work. Repetitive, predictive, logic-based. And my rule now, the one I actually live by, is this. If a task repeats, it shouldn't rely on memory. It should rely on design instead. Today, AI handles a huge amount of this for us. First line support, scheduling, internal FAQs, status updates. And I want to be clear on this. This isn't about replacing people. It's about protecting thinking time. I haven't fired any of my people, full disclaimer. Because every interruption fragments your leadership, and fragmented leadership creates slow companies. Once repetition is handled, the next question is, what about all the structured work that still needs human behind it? That's level 2 process-driven work. CRM management, reporting, campaign execution, dev works, design works, important works, valuable works, but structured works, meaning they can be clearly defined, measured, and handed off. When I first started scaling globally, I made the mistake that I think almost every founder makes. I thought offshore hiring was about cost. It's not. It's about leverage. Cost cutting is defensive. You're trying to protect margin. Leverage is architectural. You're expanding what's possible. Those are completely different mindsets, and they produce completely different outcomes. When level 2 is designed properly, your capacity expands. Your core team has room to breathe, and the whole system stabilizes. But here's where things go wrong, and I've watched this happen again and again. Founders offshore without defining the outcomes, and then when friction shows up, and it always does, they blame geography. Offshore just doesn't work for us. It's almost never geographic. It's clarity. If process isn't clearly designed, it collapses under distance. That's not a talent issue. That's once again an architecture issue. So if repetition is automated, the process is systemized, then what's left? That's level 3. And level 3 is where leadership should actually live. Strategy, decision making, creative problem solving, the high trust conversations that no systems can replace ever. This is the work that compounds. The thinking that 6 months from now turns out to have been the most important thing you did this quarter. But here's the uncomfortable truth, and I include myself in this. Most founders drift down the layers. We answer small things, approve minor requests, fix any gaps that someone else could have fixed, and it feels responsible. responsible. It feels helpful, but the reality is it's leakage. If leadership is living inside level 1 and level 2, the company never fully operates at level 3. The high leverage thinking keeps getting pushed to later, and later never quite comes. At the end of a very busy way, and ask ourselves why growth still feels this hard. Whenever a business feels heavier than it should, I now ask one question: which level is leaking upward? Is repetition interrupting thinking? Is process invading strategy? Almost always the answer is yes. And the fix isn't working harder, it isn't hiring more people, it's separation. Level 1, automate repetition. Level 2, systemize process. And level 3, protect thinking. When you separate those layers with intention, something shifts. Slack slows down, decisions speed up, the work starts to feel lighter. Not because you worked harder, because you just designed better. Work has changed. AI is part of the team now. Talent is borderless. The tools keep getting better, but architecture still decides whether you scale calmly or burn out in a very impressive way. If your company still depends on heroics, on individual carrying weight that should be distributed, that's not a people problem. It's a layering problem, and layering can be redesigned. That's what we'll keep exploring on Unplugged Chronicles. I'm glad I came back, and I'm glad you're still there.